A wet and chilly night has engulfed the streets of Minneapolis. The black hearse turns a corner and parks. We're here. Inside the hearse, a gray-haired man in a long, dark cape climbs inside a coffin built to his measurements. He shuts the lid. Okay, fellas. In the brightly lit lobby of the movie theater, box office attendants are chatting with nurses in uniforms when they notice the hearse parked outside. Men in funeral attire open the hearse's back hatch. Marquee lights reflect on the lacquered white coffin. Inside the coffin, it's tight. The man in the cape has trouble breathing, but he waits. He feels a bump when the funeral parlor employees put the coffin down on the sidewalk. Time to make his grand entrance. He pushes on the coffin lid. The lid doesn't budge. Patrons are coming out of the theater. They're abuzz. The film was scary. The film was funny. They hardly notice the white coffin lying on the sidewalk. They're too busy discussing the movie. Inside the coffin, the man starts to panic. He can't breathe. He's missing his cue. He needs to get out. He bangs against the coffin. He frantically bumps his head against the lid. He yells, "Help!" Apparently they stopped making coffins with inner handles and a bell quite a while back. When his assistant finally gets him out, William Castle, in his cape, rolls panting onto the sidewalk. The hearse is gone. So is the audience. He looks up just in time to see the marquee lights shutting off. The gimmick flopped. At least he managed to scare himself. You think that would stop him? This man was unstoppable. He had plenty of films yet to make, plenty of gimmicks he hoped would scare the pants off America. William Castle would be known as the king of gimmicks, the man who thought outside the coffin, the proto-Nathan Fielder, the abominable showman. But there's more to Castle than B-movies and ballyhoo. He produced Orson Welles. He produced a French mime. How's that for art house? For all his antics, he always longed to be taken seriously. He strived for recognition. He dreamt of an Oscar. He would never know how influential he would become. He put the joy of movies into the hearts of the next generation of directors. Robert Zemeckis, Joe Dante, John Waters. He invented babysitter horror. He experimented in interactive storytelling. So step right up, won't you? And mind the cockroaches. They haven't eaten in a while. I'm your host, Tor Parsons. These are my co-hosts, Jollibee the Durian, Sluds the Shoggoth, and Siegfried the Slug. And welcome to Tor's Cabinet of Curiosities. Do you know what a VPN is? You probably do, but I'm gonna tell you anyway because you can't skip this ad. Try it and see. You can't get up from your seat either. Try to move. I've glued you to my chair. You are completely at my mercy. Now, a VPN stands for Virtual Private Network. In a layperson's terms, it's a way to access the internet through a server that isn't anywhere near your computer so that you can befuddle your internet service provider into thinking you're in a different country or just on a more secure network. Why would you want that? Well, every time you browse the internet, your device is sending information across networks before it reaches the website you're visiting. Without protection, that traffic can be visible to other parties along the way, like network operators, advertisers, or even people on the same public Wi-Fi. A VPN encrypts that connection and hides your IP address, which helps keep your browsing activity and personal data more private. Once you have a VPN from private internet access, that's PIA, borders don't matter. Suddenly, your streaming libraries get a lot bigger. Shows that mysteriously aren't available in your region suddenly become very available. It's like international TV tourism, but without the jet lag. With servers in 91 countries, coincidentally, the exact same number of countries Jollibee the Durian is classified as a lethal weapon in, PIA offers the most coverage, most security, and most cross-platform reliability of any VPN. It's on all the platforms. I know a lot of Durian heads use Linux, that's what you're called now, Durian heads, and it works on Linux too. One subscription protects an unlimited amount of devices at the same time. They've been rated excellent by Trustpilot, which not a lot of VPNs have. By using my link in the description, piavpn.com/torscabinet, you get 83% off on private internet access. That's just $2.03 a month. There's a 30-day money-back guarantee, and you also get 24/7 customer support and 4 extra months completely for free. Sorry about the glue. It'll wear off in a few weeks. Born William Schloss, that's German for castle, on April 24, 1914 in New York, William Castle doesn't wait long to experience the worst of what life has to offer. When he's 9 years old, he loses his mother to pneumonia. A year later, his father passes away. Castle goes to live with his older sister, elsewhere in the city. Young Castle doesn't do well in the company of other boys. He's clumsy, awkward, withdrawn, unable to make friends. At school, at summer camp, he's mocked and bullied. Until he discovers that he has a special talent. He's a contortionist. He can tuck his legs all the way behind his ears. "Look, it's Spider Boy," the kids say. The laughter, the awe, the applause, the recognition, it's addictive. To get his fix of audience acclaim, Castle would do anything. He tries to swim the icy waters of the Hudson River. His last thought before passing out, "At least I'll have my name in the papers." Somehow he survives. Next, he throws himself under a train from the platform of the 116th Street subway station. Somehow he survives. Every other week, his antics land him at the police station. He runs away, hopefully to Hollywood, and hitchhikes as far as Albany before he gets robbed of the $30 he stole from his sister's purse. The light at the end of the tunnel has shiny pointed teeth. In 1927, aged 13, he sits in the balcony of the Fulton Theater. There, he watches Bela Lugosi on stage, the original Dracula, suck his victim's blood. Count Dracula, you say? All right. One. There's just one, and his name is Bela Lugosi. Almost every night for the next 2 weeks, with $1.10 from my sister's purse, I sat in the balcony and listened to frightened audiences scream. Castle remembers, in his autobiography, "Soon I was no longer watching the play, I had more fun watching the audiences." That's prophetic on so many levels. One night he plucks up the courage to meet Lugosi backstage. The terrifying Lugosi proves a kind and gentle soul. He offers Castle the opportunity to watch the show from the wings. Castle writes, "I knew then what I wanted to do with my life. I wanted to scare the pants off audiences." 2 years later, Castle gets a phone call. Lugosi hasn't forgotten him. The Prince of Darkness recommended Castle for the job of assistant stage manager on the national tour of Dracula. Castle promptly drops out of high school. For the play, he suggests promotional gimmicks, installing a closed black coffin outside the theater, burning incense in the lobby to put the audience in the mood. He learns how to put a show together, and how to promote it too. He graduates to stage manager. He works on other plays, An American Tragedy, Oliver Twist. His sister moves to Dallas, and the theater becomes Castle's sole family. He tries his hand at acting. He actually does pretty well, landing lead roles. Then the Great Depression hits, and Broadway starves. For 5 years, Castle knocks on doors. In theaters, he does all sorts of odd jobs, playing 3-bit parts per night, pulling the curtain, until his 25th birthday, when lightning strikes twice on the same night. At the time, Orson Welles, yet to make movies, is the hottest ticket on Broadway. The actor, producer, and director, the boy wonder of the 1930s, rehearses his plays at the Stony Creek Theater, up in Brantford, Connecticut, during the summer before sending them to Manhattan. At a party, William Castle meets actor Everett Sloane, a regular of Wells' Stony Creek troupe. Sloane tells him that Wells is closing Stony Creek to leave for Hollywood and prepare for making Citizen Kane. Castle realizes the theater is going to be available all summer. Never short on chutzpah, he charms Wells' phone number out of Sloane. A minute later, Castle grabs the phone. Wells agrees to meet him the next day. Back at his party, Castle moves on to another guest, a much better looking one in Castle's eyes. Ellen Schwanecke, a German actress, has fled the rise of the Nazis. Castle can see her topping the bill of a play he doesn't have at the theater he's yet to obtain. Clearly between these two there's a spark. Ellen Schwanecke might be persuaded to act in his play, with one caveat: no horror. She doesn't like horror. There's enough horror in the world, she says. Anything but horror. Okay, whatever. Buoyant from his encounter with Ellen, Castle shines at his appointment with Orson Welles. The boy wonder agrees to let the kid have the theater. The price, $500 a week for 10 weeks. It'll cost Castle a sizable chunk of the money he just inherited from his father's meager estate, an investment on his future self. Now, he needs a play to stage. And more chutzpah. The Actors' Equity is the board representing stage actors. They inform Castle that Ellen Schwanecke can't act in a summer play. An equity rule prohibits aliens, by which they mean human foreigners, from performing during the summer, as it's peak theater season. What Castle needs if he wants to circumvent the rule is a play especially written for Ellen, something no American actress can portray as well. Castle doesn't miss a beat and declares that he owns the rights to a German play called Not for Children, a title he makes up on the spot. He claims the play will provide employment for 40 American actors, plus Ellen, of course. The Actors' Equity rep tells him that if he can bring the script on Monday, and it includes minor parts for 40 American actors, he will be allowed to cast Ellen as a leading lady. On Monday. This is Friday afternoon. 6 pots of coffee and 48 hours later, the play is written. It does not have parts for 40 American actors, it has parts for 39 American actors and a dog. Later sources would cast a shadow on this anecdote, crediting the play to a real Austrian playwright and an American one. But this attribution could well have been solidified after the play was written and the war was over. It's a messy rabbit hole. Let's go back to our Mr. Castle, or he shall be late for his appointment. Oh dear. Castle pays for the son of his dry cleaning man to translate the play into German. He rushes to the German consulate, still active in New York in 1939. He manages to have the manuscript stamped with a swastika and all manner of red tape. Then, he runs to Central Park, throws the manuscript on the ground, jumps up and down on it to give it a worn, well-traveled look. He sets the edges on fire, like it survived a bombed-out building in Europe. He gets to the Actors' Equity building with minutes to spare. Castle starts producing the play. 2 weeks into rehearsals, disaster strikes. Ellen Schwanecke is invited to play at a national theater festival in Germany. All the great German stars will be there, all expenses are paid, and the invitation is signed by Goebbels himself. As Castle tells it, Ellen is distraught, in tears, terrified. She doesn't want to go, knowing she won't come back, but she has to, for her career. The story doesn't ring 100% true, as Schwanecke fled Germany to escape the Nazi regime. It's not likely she would consider going back, no matter what. But the actual invitation has been found. You can see it in Spine Tingler, the documentary some of this episode is based on. A reasonable guess is that Ellen wasn't worried about the invitation, but showed it to Castle nonetheless. Castle saw eagles and swastikas, red ink stamps, and Goebbels' signature, and he knew his marketing budget had landed. Castle writes a telegram, purportedly directly to Hitler and Goebbels. The strongly worded note refuses to let the leading lady leave. Does he send the telegram? Castle's own daughter, Terry, has doubts, but he makes sure the press knows about it. He tours the newsrooms of every single newspaper in Manhattan, telling his story, showing the invitation and his telegram. He plays dumb, asking for advice and begging the papers not to publish the story. 4 newspapers run the story. It hits the national cables the next day. Ellen Schwanecke becomes the girl who said no to Hitler. Despite a heat wave striking Connecticut, audiences line up to buy advance tickets, and the unknown play, by an unknown producer, is sold out. Why stop there? Castle wants one last stunt to make it the biggest opening of the season. He would later write that he was totally ashamed of this particular trick. He should be. In the middle of the night, he grabs some red paint and draws big bloody swastikas over the theater walls. He smashes a few windows, overturns the box office. Then, he calls the press, clamors that local Nazi sympathizers have vandalized his beloved theater, but he will not be intimidated, and the show will go on. He gets the governor of Connecticut on the phone, pretends to be Orson Welles, acts hysterical, and requires protection. Surprisingly, the play is actually good. Not for Children catches the attention of Samuel Marks, a Columbia Pictures emissary in New York. Marks offers Castle an introduction to Harry Cohn, the boss of Columbia Pictures. Castle sets off for Hollywood. In the trunk of his car, he packs the props for his next play, a crime drama, worried that they might disappear in his absence. After several days on the road, he stops one night in Cheyenne, Wyoming. He realizes his hotel is a brothel when a lady of the night knocks at his door. A few minutes later, as Castle, occupied with the young lady, is in no position to react, his door slams open. The police arrest him. He looks a lot like a guy who just robbed a gas station. On his first night in jail, Castle is eaten alive by bedbugs. He gets his phone call, but Harry Cohn at Columbia says he's never heard of him. The cops open his trunk and find the theater props, counterfeit money, handcuffs, a blackjack, several sawed-off shotguns. Now Castle shares his cell with all sorts of real-life criminals. 2 weeks go by and he can't see a way out. At night, he cries on the shoulder of the Wyoming Strangler. Then, someone at Harry Cohn's office remembers the scheduled meeting, and Cohn remembers the Wyoming police phone call. 3 days later, William Castle finally arrives in Hollywood. Harry Cohn, one of the most unpleasant men in Hollywood, hires Castle on a 6-month, 7-way contract. That's 7 jobs: actor, director, producer, writer, dialogue director, production assistant, film editor, for $50 a week. Castle learns how to make a film from the ground up. For his first day on a set, he attends the shooting of Golden Boy, directed by Ruben Mamoulian. Castle stands beside a young guy about his age who looks extremely nervous. Castle plays it cool. "Relax, kid," he says. "It's my first day too. What do you do?" The kid in question is William Holden. Later a leading man in timeless classics like Sunset Boulevard and The Bridge on the River Kwai, he's about to act in his first starring role. This foot-in-the-mouth, egg-on-the-face bravado would soon become a hallmark of young William Castle, and it works for him. In a bar, he meets George Stevens, director of huge blockbusters, a major power player in Hollywood. Not recognizing Stevens, Castle pretends to be a friend of Harry Cohn's. Then he realizes who he's talking to. But Stevens is amused and hires him as a dialogue director. Great! Except Castle has no idea what a dialogue director does. Directing the dialogue, surely. Well, kinda. A dialogue director cues the actors. In rehearsals, they help the actors land the right music and rhythm for their lines. What they don't do is direct the actors. William Castle doesn't know that. So on his first day, on the set of George Stevens' melodrama Penny Serenade, Cary Grant messes up a line. Castle yells, "Cut!" And if that wasn't embarrassing enough, he adds, "Cary, you read the line all wrong. Let me show you how to get your laugh." George Stevens wants to strangle him. He settles for the more diplomatic option. Castle is fired on the spot. Cary Grant saves Castle's neck by admitting he read the line wrong. Castle rolls up into a ball in the corner. That is, until the day when they're rehearsing special effects for an earthquake, set in a Japanese courtyard. Castle is tasked with being a stand-in. "Whatever you do," Stevens tells him, "don't move." Stevens gets behind a console and starts pressing buttons. Button 1, the sidewalk starts to tremble. Button 2, the houses are shaking. Button 3, a lamppost falls. Button 4, the water main breaks. Castle is soaked. The ground is splitting in front of him. He falls on his ass, holding on for dear life as more buttons get pressed. Button 10 starts fires all over the set. Castle is scared shitless, but the director's bug has got him good. After 3 years at Columbia, Castle finally gets to direct his first picture. The title couldn't be better, The Chance of a Lifetime. That's all Castle likes about the script, though. He thinks the plot is contrived, the characters wooden, the dialogue lousy, but he's not allowed to make changes. He shoots it in 12 days, on schedule and on budget. His supervisor at Columbia takes over the editing, apparently making it worse. Variety calls The Chance of a Lifetime, quote, "probably the worst directed picture in the history of motion pictures." But Harry Cohn doesn't care about critics. He still believes in Castle. The next script he hands him, The Whistler, is a scary film noir. Castle calls it one of the most terrifying screenplays I'd ever read. He's delighted. This is what he'd always wanted to do. Castle develops his style, wide shots with slanted camera angles, cuts to unsettling close-ups, an irritating soundtrack. The film is a hit. The press calls Castle's direction brilliant and riveting. Castle would go on to direct 2 more installments of the Whistler franchise to critical and commercial success. In between Columbia films, Harry Cohn lends Castle to other studios, which makes a ton of money for Cohn but no difference to Castle. He cranks out more B-movies, the lifeblood of double feature screenings. Then he takes a break to go direct a murder mystery on Broadway, Meet a Body. During the 3rd act, Castle tries his hand at a bit of fourth wall fuckery. The killer flees up the theater aisle. The cops follow in hot pursuit and shoot him. He slumps over the balcony railing, almost falling into the orchestra pit. It was a great gimmick, Castle recalls, making the spectators part of a play. That audience involvement, as much as the outrageous promotion techniques, would become his trademark. For his next film, in the role of the murderer, he casts a beginner named Robert Mitchum, later the iconic villain of movies like Night of the Hunter and the original Cape Fear. The film gets good reviews. More importantly, Orson Welles, in his weekly column in the New York Post, gives him a glowing endorsement. Castle grabs the opportunity to reconnect with Welles, who by now has burst into Hollywood, directed Citizen Kane, obtained an unheard-of final cut, produced 3 more movies, failed miserably, and gotten fired from RKO. Welles urgently needs $55,000 to release costumes held against payment for his stage production of Around the World in 80 Days. He borrows the money from Columbia in exchange for a promise to direct his next movie under producer Harry Cohn. Meanwhile, Castle, for one of his earlier thrillers, had bought the rights to a novel, If I Die Before I Wake. Castle pitches it to Welles. Welles takes the project to Harry Cohn without Castle. Cohn greenlights the film, provided Welles directs. He does, and the project becomes The Lady from Shanghai. Castle swallows the betrayal with a healthy ladle of disappointment. Because it's Welles, with his wife Rita Hayworth in the lead, the film will be one of the big-budget pictures of the year, as opposed to Castle, still in his 20s, directing it for $70,000. It's great for the movie, not so much for Castle and his shattered dreams of directing an A-list film. He certainly hopes that nothing like that will ever happen to him again. Yeah, put a pin in that. He works on The Lady from Shanghai as an associate producer. He negotiates renting Errol Flynn's rather magnificent yacht in Acapulco. Flynn agrees, so long as he's captaining the ship. It's an appropriately hectic shoot. 50 Hollywood actors and technicians, along with 60 Mexican extras and crew, and 15 tons of equipment meet in Acapulco. Equipment needs electricity, so a long line of dugout canoes support the cables from the yacht to the generators on shore. Reflections of the sun on the water overexpose entire days' rolls of film, straight into the trash, reshoot, reshoot, reshoot. An assistant cameraman dies of a coronary. Welles is bitten by a vicious local insect and thinks he may die too. The budget, initially $2.3 million, enough to make 25 William Castle films, rises with the thermometer. Errol Flynn, having sent his very pregnant wife to the hospital, disappears without a word. Castle hints that he may have gone on a bender to make up for his wife not being able to carry out her wifely duties. Now Flynn's gone, there's nobody to steer the ship. Then, Castle catches amoebic dysentery. Not a small matter, it's curtains for Castle. He spends weeks in a Hollywood hospital. He gets out in time to see The Lady from Shanghai become a box office failure. Perhaps he feels a bit of schadenfreude when he sees the receipts. When Castle finally reports back to the studio, in July of 1947, he owes them 6 months of work. He directs every script Columbia throws at him. Scripts, he says, I could do with my eyes shut. Finally, he rebels over The Crime Doctor's Secret. In case you missed it, that's the sequel to The Crime Doctor's Warning and The Crime Doctor's Manhunt, both directed by Castle before he left for Acapulco, as well as The Crime Doctor's Gamble he just finished. Seems this time, The Crime Doctor went too far. Harry Cohn is livid at Castle's refusal, but he doesn't fire Castle. He does worse. Effective November 30th, 1947, Castle is suspended, meaning he's still under contract with Columbia, he can't work anywhere else, and he doesn't get paid. Now that he's got time to socialize, William Castle meets his future wife. Ellen, another Ellen, is a Polish immigrant. Also, she's no fool. She charms the toupee off Harry Cohn. As a wedding present, the boss of Columbia unsuspends Castle, and he buys the couple a honeymoon trip to Europe, provided, of course, that Castle films some B-roll in Paris for another film. After Paris, the couple arrives in Capri, a gorgeous island off the coast of Naples. The very next day, Cohn urgently calls Castle back to Hollywood to shoot a major film with James Stewart. Ellen is fuming. Her husband is torn from staying in Capri to placate his wife and finally getting a chance to direct an A-list movie. So what does Castle do? He gets sick. Very sick. Kidney stones, he says. Once he's finally fit to fly, Harry Cohn gives him the bad news. Columbia has dropped the Jimmy Stewart movie. There's a silver lining, though. Universal International, at the time a comparatively minor studio, wants to buy his contract. So, in 1949, Castle signs a 3-year contract with Universal. It's a disappointment. He keeps directing pop. Then he pitches $1 million idea. Let's adapt Jules Verne's From the Earth to the Moon, but let's shoot it in 3D. Castle remembers the process from an MGM short he saw as a kid. 2 cameras, 6 feet apart. The audience wears glasses to resolve the blurry picture into a 3D image. He proposes they call the process See-A-Vision, the new sensation where you're part of the picture. Universal shoots down the idea. They say the audience won't wear glasses, which would be too expensive to manufacture. Also, Universal just isn't interested in sci-fi. At the end of his contract with Universal, a dejected Castle returns to Columbia for a very comfortable fee. There he directs everything: thrillers, film noirs, melodramas, westerns, lots of westerns, Bible epics. When actor Lee J. Cobb has a heart attack on the set of The Houston Story, Castle stands in for him, shot from far away. That's until the studio sends Gene Barry as a replacement. Castle holds the dubious honor of directing a film where 3 different actors play the same part, and the audience is not supposed to notice. He occasionally directs episodes for TV. Then, Buona Devil, the first color 3D blockbuster featuring lions crafted by friend of the channel Charlie Gamora, makes a fortune. In my episode about Gamora, I talked a little bit about this forgotten era of Hollywood, the original 1950s fad for 3D movies. Belatedly, Castle is given a couple of 3D movies to direct. At that point, though, he's fast approaching burnout point. Then, on a dark and stormy night, for real, he takes his wife to see the latest film sensation. Les Diaboliques is a French film with subtitles, and 2 women in the lead. At the time, none of that was a turnoff. When Castle gets to the theater, there's a line around the block, standing patiently in the pouring rain. The theater is packed with teenagers who heard that it scared the shit out of you. Did it just? The final twist sends the whole theater screaming. It's a revelation. Castle hasn't directed a horror film in 10 years. He feels awakened, energized, excited. He confides in his wife his long-held ambition. I want to scare the pants off America. In order to do that, Castle needs to find his own properties. He leaves Columbia, mortgages his house, buys the rights to a book, The Marble Forest, finances the adaptation. Macabre is shot in 9 days. The similarities with the plot of Les Diaboliques abound, yet Castle thinks there's something missing. It didn't have that blood-curdling quality that I tried to get, he says. Other directors would rewrite, reshoot, re-edit. Not William Castle. Besides, he's out of budget. What can he do? It's the middle of the night, and William Castle sits bolt upright, scaring his wife. Got it! An insurance policy. His wife tells him that they already have one. Not for us. For everybody. Lloyd's of London, the insurance company famous for insuring anything from the Titanic to J-Lo's Southern Hemisphere, needs some convincing. Castle wants to insure the whole world population against dying of fright while watching his movie. That's 2 billion people. Even Lloyd's can't do that. What Lloyd's can do, though, is insure Castle, who then pays the beneficiary. But to calculate the cost of the policy, payable up front, the company needs to estimate how many people will actually drop dead during the screening of Macabre. Castle assures them it's a publicity stunt, but that doesn't change how the math is done. There follows a surrealist conversation where Castle and the insurance agents bargain on the number of unfortunate moviegoers who won't survive the film. This is one of the stories that makes me think William Castle, in addition to being a genuine Hollywood visionary, is also worth calling the original Nathan Fielder. They settle at 5. Of the world's population, 5 people will probably die of fright at this movie. Castle pays the policy. Now, he needs a major studio to release the movie. he shows it to Warner Brothers. Before the screening, he gives Warner executives his insurance documents to sign. Warren, not blown away by the movie, offers to pick it up on a complicated and expensive deal. That won't do. Castle would lose money. While he's hunting for another studio, Warner poaches his insurance idea, copies his policy word for word, and uses it for another movie. Castle threatens to sue. He ends up making a deal with Allied Artists, not United Artists, a well-known studio that would be one of Hollywood's giants right up till the 80s. Allied Artists deals in low-budget pictures with an aggressive promotional strategy. They love the gimmick.
Your attention, please. During every suspenseful moment of the running of the motion picture Macabre, the life of everyone in this theater will be insured by Lloyd's of London for $1,000 against death by fright. However, even Lloyd's of London will not grant coverage for any person with a known heart condition or for suicide by any member of the audience.
The gimmick works. The film breaks house records of tickets sold in a movie theater. Patrons can't wait to sign their policies. Nurses, real nurses, wait in the lobby during screenings armed with smelling salts. Hearses park in front of theaters, and sometimes, just sometimes, Castle in a cape bursts out of the coffin. At the end of the day, Macabre, a $90,000 film, grosses $5 million at the box office. No one would ever collect on the policy. What's next? Allied Artists want another shocker. Exhibitors, that's theater owners, want another gimmick. I decided, Castle writes, on a good old-fashioned ghost story, complete with a haunted house. In the leading role, he needs someone with class and mystery. At the MGM coffee shop, he spots Vincent Price brooding in his coffee. The great character actor was just passed over for a part. William Castle, salesman extraordinaire, cheers him up with his pitch. Your wife, he recounts, tries to throw you into a vat of boiling acid. How charming, Price exclaims with gleaming eyes, his appetite restored. The deal is made over apple pie. The trailer for The House on Haunted Hill introduces a new William Castle trademark, breaking the fourth wall. For someone as obsessed with audience participation as Castle, it's a natural next step. But he doesn't do it himself yet. That would come with the next movie. He lets his star do the honors.
I'm Vincent Price, and you're invited to my party in the house on Haunted Hill, where so far the ghosts have murdered only 7 people. So won't you come and make it 8?
Sure, with an invitation like that, I'll go. And now the gimmick. The gimmick is called Emergo. Interviewed on TV, Castle insists on the proper pronunciation, rhyming with the name Joe. He's proud of his invention. What's Emergo? The skeleton chases the leading lady on screen, comes face to face with a camera for an extreme close-up, and then emerges from the screen into the theater. Better than 3D. Are you picturing actors in skeleton suits running up the aisles? William Castle wouldn't stoop so low. Instead, just in case I can't go through it with a straight face, let's have director and professional anarchist John Waters, Castle's biggest fan, recall his childhood memories. Each theater was equipped with a large black box installed next to the screen. The doors to the box would suddenly fly open and a 12-foot plastic skeleton would light up and zoom past the audience on a wire to the projection booth. The skeleton came up fairly slowly, so the kids in the audience had time to throw stuff at him. It was children's anarchy. It was a shared experience in show business bedlam. Was this not the first film to use audience participation to an absurd length? Yes, it was. Also, as a business ploy, it works. The kids come back for seconds. They raid the concession stand for popcorn and soda cans to throw at the skeleton. Nobody says The House on Haunted Hill is a good film, but it's heaps of fun. Does this remind you of anything?
Chicken jockey!
When the chicken jockey scene came on, that's when everything just broke loose.
And the director's in on it. Castle takes wacky poses for fan pictures. He hams it up on TV, and the film's end credits list Skeleton by himself. While Hitchcock makes movies to scare the adult audience, Castle appeals to the kids. John Waters remembers that parents would drop their children at theaters, pick them up afterwards. It was a lot more fun to watch and scream and misbehave when your parents weren't around. Did William Castle just inadvertently invent interactive entertainment? At any rate, he has a second hit on his hands, so Columbia wants him back. He's now at the head of William Castle Production. Columbia finances his films. He doesn't have to mortgage his house anymore every time he's got a new project. The year is 1959, and Castle's next project is called The Tingler. Vincent Price, a pathologist with a dark secret and a darker mustache, discovers that when you're scared, a creature called the Tingler grows at the base of your spine. If you scream, you kill the Tingler. If you don't scream, the Tingler kills you. One intriguing thing about the pseudoscience of the Tingler, it was also the first movie to depict the use of LSD, referred to by name in the movie. There wasn't much of a psychedelic subculture yet at the time, nor a moral panic about acid. LSD was a new experimental chemical used in therapy and, behind the scenes, studied by the CIA as a potential tool of mind control. The Tingler, I think, includes the first ever cinematic depiction of LSD as something terrifying that can destroy your mind.
It's closing in on me. You gotta make it stop.
It may even be responsible for the myth that LSD is stored for years in your spinal fluid. But again, The Tingler is mostly a movie about a little monster that lives in your spine and kills you. The final act of the film takes place in a silent movie theater. This is interactive storytelling gold. Castle plants an actress among real-life patrons. She screams and faints when a young woman in the fictional theater is attacked by the Tingler. Our screen goes black as Vincent Price makes an announcement.
Ladies and gentlemen, there's no cause for alarm. A young lady has fainted. She is being attended to by a doctor and is quite all right. So please remain seated.
If you were in the audience, you might think Price was talking directly to you. That's how you break the fourth wall without looking into the camera. Then, the Tingler appears. The monstrous creature looks like a cross between a cooked lobster and Siegfried the Slug. I'm sorry, Siegfried. You can see the wire pulling the thing across the room and up to the projectionist's booth. The Tingler attacks the projectionist. The film breaks, and the Tingler's silhouette appears across the screen. An announcement comes over the speakers.
Ladies and gentlemen, please do not panic, but scream. Scream for your lives. The Tingler is loose in this theater, and if you don't scream, it may kill you.
In real life, patrons scream, or don't. Either way, they get buzzed. Buzzed, as in vibrated, shaken, and stirred, thanks to Percepto, the film's main gimmick. Percepto is a little wired box screwed under the seats. When the real-life projectionist presses a button, the box delivers a vibration to the seats. The Tingler is alive! Reading Castle's memoirs, quote, teams of special effects men are sent out all over the country to install the complicated equipment at night. Real life is more prosaic. Castle is stingy, as he always was with his budgets. There are only a couple dozen Percepto boxes per theater. Premieres are staggered so that you can uninstall in San Francisco to install in Chicago. Many of the devices broke in transit, so theaters that were reached later in the Tingler's run had fewer buzzing seats. Naturally, buzzing people's bottoms doesn't go off without a glitch. In Philadelphia, a beefy truck driver is so incensed that he rips his entire seat from the floor. It takes 5 ushers to subdue him. In Boston, on the night before the premiere, the projectionist decides to test the fanny buzzers on a group of older women watching The Nun's Story, right at the moment where Audrey Hepburn and the nuns are starting to pray. These Bostonian ladies may or may not have experienced the divine, but for young John Waters, it's a revelation. Looking back, The Tingler is the fondest movie-going memory of my youth. I used to see it every day. Since by the time it went to my neighborhood, only about 10 random seats were wired, I would run through the theater searching for the magical buzzers. As I sat there experiencing the miracle of Percepto, I realized there could be such a thing as art in the cinema.
Listen to William Castle, whom the Saturday Evening Post calls the master of movie horror.
Do you believe in ghosts? I do.
After Emergo and Percepto, Illusiono is the hook for the next movie, 13 Ghosts, shot in ectoplasmic color. Castle sells it in the trailer. Check this out.
When you see 13 ghosts, you'll be given a supernatural viewer like this, which will enable you to penetrate for the first time into the spirit world.
How many ghosts are in this movie? Not 12, not 14.
There's a ghost for everyone in the family.
Count Dracula? Again, there's only one. But count these ghosts, and you will be guaranteed to arrive at a big old 13, which is More ghosts than I've ever seen in one place, for one. But you need to use the thing old Mr. Sloss is holding to see them. As you buy your ticket, you are handed a ghost viewer. Want to see ghosts? Look through the orange lens. Too scared of ghosts? The blue lens is for you. Castle had already used the superimposition of color film onto a black and white negative to give us quite a decent scare with the bathtub full of blood in the Tingler. Here, he films his 13 ghosts on color stock, only keeps the red color in the lab, then prints it onto the black and white film. The ghosts can only be seen through a red lens, supposedly. Without the glasses, you can definitely see shadows, but they're not as scary. How long can the gimmick era last? It's 1960 and one of the big sharks is jumping on Castle's B-list bandwagon. Alfred Hitchcock's latest movie, Psycho, comes with a double gimmick, a warning and a plea. The warning: no one will be admitted after the film has begun. The plea: don't spoil the final twist. Did Psycho need a gimmick to work? Today, in hindsight, most people would answer, of course it didn't, it's a masterpiece. But let's tally the numbers. Psycho's budget was ridiculously low for Hitchcock, $800,000. His previous opus, the masterpiece that is North by Northwest, cost $4.3 million. It grossed a bit under $10 million. Psycho made $50 million. Biggest Hitchcock hit ever. The gimmick worked. Now that Psycho is the talk of the town, Castle knows what his next movie will be. He works with screenwriter Rob White, a preacher's son who penned his past 3 films. Following Psycho's playbook, Homicidal will feature a gender-shifting, knife-wielding maniac and an elderly lady in a wheelchair. Thank goodness there's a gimmick. Castle, once again, has a great idea. Or so he thinks. He calls it the Fright break. According to him, the last 2 minutes of the film are the scariest. So, 2 minutes before the end, he inserts a warning. If you think you can't stand how scary the end is going to be, run to the ticket booth right now and you'll get your money back. You have 60 seconds. He didn't quite think this one through. At the time, screenings were permanent, meaning you could walk in on the middle of a film, watch the end, and stay in your seat to watch the beginning of the next screening. No one would shoo you out. Latecomers could enjoy a movie at any time, and film lovers could watch a movie several times in a row for the price of one ticket. Now you can guess what homicidal viewers did on premiere day. They watched until the end, passed the money back warning, they stayed in their seats for a second screening, and when the warning appeared again, they ran to get their ticket refunded. 2 movies for the price of 0. Theater owners are very, very displeased, but it doesn't take Castle long to find the workaround. The next day, he has tickets printed in different colors for every screening. Wrong color? No refund. Then he makes it more unpleasant to ask for your money back, and here's where he really reminds me of Nathan Fielder. The way from the screening room exit to the box office is marked with a yellow stripe and yellow signs that say, "Cowards keep walking." When you get to the ticket booth, before getting your refund, you have to stand in a space bathed in yellow light marked Coward's Corner, where everyone stares at you and you sign a card, a yellow card, obviously, stating, "I am a bona fide coward." Refund rate drops under 1%. William Castle loved Homicidal. Of all the films I had made, Homicidal was the most fun, he writes. I consider it one of the most original of my motion pictures. A classic, sure. Original? To be fair, he pushed the concept of Psycho to the next level. Spoiler alert here, I guess. We open on a brutal murder spree committed by a mysterious woman. Evidence seems to point to a shopkeeper named Miriam, who has an alibi, but also she's in line to inherit a massive fortune from her father, if and only if her distant brother Warren dies before getting married. Their dad was a raging misogynist who didn't want his fortune falling into a woman's hands. Miriam and her boyfriend Carl try to track down the real killer to exonerate Miriam. Clues lead them to her brother Warren. Warren isn't home, but a woman Miriam has never met before answers the door. The audience knows that this woman is the killer, but that's not the twist. This is Emily, and she's Warren's wife. There goes the inheritance. Whether or not you've seen Psycho, there's a good chance that you know that movie's twist, and therefore there's a good chance that you can guess the ending of Homicidal. Emily and Warren are the same person. At the end, we learn the full story. Emily was born female, but her dad wanted a boy, so she was raised as Warren. She was repeatedly beaten up when she failed to act masculine enough. Her dad paid neighborhood kids to fight with Warren to, quote, toughen him up. Predictably, it did Emily no favors. Towards the end of the movie, we learn that Emily spent time in Denmark, and, quote, What happened there? We don't know. Denmark at the time was famous for being the only place in the West where you could have transformative gender surgery. To play the character of Emily/Warren, Castle hires television actress Joan Marshall, a woman. She later appeared in The Twilight Zone, Bonanza, and the first season of Star Trek. Castle had her cut her hair, had some makeup done, and listed her in the credits as Jean Arliss, a stage name she never otherwise used, perceived as gender neutral. Until Castle publishes his autobiography, 15 years after the film's release, he never gives up the actress's identity, so the audience is left with a double mystery: Emily or Warren's gender and the gender of the actor playing them. It seems to have worked way past the film's expiry date. A 1993 academic study on Hollywood androgyny remarks that, quote, Jean Arliss is a totally convincing woman, and calls the performance a completely undetectable female impersonation. Castle is, of course, not the first B-movie director to address the gender identity question on film. The legendary no-budget director Ed Wood put out Glenn or Glenda, a sympathetic semi-documentary about a trans woman, 7 years previously, but Glenn or Glenda is incredibly weird. The hallucination sequences, flashbacks within flashbacks, and philosophical pronouncements by Bela Lugosi as the scientist left audiences perplexed. Castle's Homicidal paints a schematic but clear and convincing picture of gender identity trauma. The film releases to critical acclaim, albeit even the positive reviews calling it derivative of Hitchcock's Psycho. Today, it may be the best regarded movie as a movie in Castle's filmography. Only a few months after the release of Homicidal in 1961, audiences can enjoy the next Castle production, with a gimmick of its own. Mr. Sardonicus features a torture chamber with a victim covered in leeches. Castle, looking as usual for the cheapest option, acquires a bottleful of the live critters. The actor adamantly refuses to put them on his body. Castle demonstrates by placing several leeches on his own chest. See, it's nothing. They're perfectly harmless, he says. Then the leeches start sucking, and he can't pull them off. They weren't as much fun as I thought, he writes. But the leeches aren't the problem. The ending is. Mr. Sardonicus, the rictus grinning title character, goes insane and dies. Columbia says it's too dark for the audience. They want a happy ending. Castle refuses. They're at a stalemate. Until Castle realizes Columbia executives have just handed him his next gimmick. Should Mr. Sardonicus live? Does he deserve to die? Let the audience decide. Spectators prop up voting cards. Thumbs up, thumbs down. Someone from the theater tallies the votes. Meanwhile, on screen, there's William Castle pretending to do the counting himself.
But has Mr. Sardonicus been punished enough? Don't you agree with me that such a miserable scoundrel should be made to suffer and suffer and suffer? I think ordinary punishment is too good for Mr. Sardonicus. If you feel that way too, if you want to show him no mercy and punish him as he deserves, then hold up your punishment poll ballot with the thumb pointing down.
Then the projectionist, who has received reels with both endings, loads one or the other, depending on the verdict. Supposedly, the public chose death every time. Castle claims there really were two endings. He writes, contrary to some opinions, just in case the audience voted for mercy, we had the other ending. That would mean actually counting the votes, 100 or more, in the dark, signaling the results to the projectionist, also in the dark, and waiting for the appropriate reel to load. It feels like a lot. Researching for this episode, I couldn't find anyone, then or now, who claimed to have seen the merciful version. But Castle doesn't realize that he is pretty much single-handedly laying down the foundations of what we call interactive storytelling. Instead, he's pained by his B-list status. Hollywood, he writes, was a snobbish town, and important stars refused to associate themselves with my modest-budget exploitation pictures. The gimmicks in his next two movies get weaker. Zots, a Disney-like comedy, floods the streets with billboards and bumper stickers and buttons bearing the single word, Zots. Children are given plastic replicas of the enchanted coin in the film. They're supposed to shout Zots at the coin to conjure magical powers. There is no known connection between the movie and the candy called Zots. Castle has already made 13 Ghosts, and that was interesting and interactive, but he's not done with that auspicious number. What's his next project involving the number 13? Eurovision, basically. 13 Frightened Girls is a spy thriller where the titular characters are diplomats' daughters. The production sees 13 countries host casting competitions for teenage girls. Castle shoots 13 opening sequences, each time featuring a different girl as the narrator. When the film tours worldwide, Castle introduces the teenager from the country he's in as the star of the film. Of course, it doesn't work as well as if he could attach a big name to his cast. After many years, he writes, I still had to prove myself, this time getting an important star, anyone. He warns Columbia, no gimmick this time. The A-list star will guarantee success. Robert Bloch, the author of Psycho, writes Castle's next script. The title, Straight-Jacket. It features an axe murderess. Classic starlet Joan Crawford, now nearly 60, has just had a horrendous time dueling with Bette Midler in Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, the movie in which the aging washed-up actresses who famously hate each other play aging washed-up actresses who hate each other, is a box office success but a publicity nightmare. Later on, Crawford and Davis will insist that the production of Baby Jane went fine, actually. The two of them had had a rivalry decades ago, but by then they'd mended fences. That's not what the tabloids are saying, though, and both stars' already flagging careers are damaged. After nearly 90 films in 40 years, Crawford is toxic. She agrees to do Straight-Jacket. Getting a big-name lead at last is a curse in disguise for Castle. Crawford asks for rewrites, requests wardrobe from New York, gets the actress playing her daughter fired, insists on a product placement deal with Pepsi because she sits on their board of directors, being the widow of Alfred Steele, the former CEO. Worse, she wants something that's never been done in a William Castle movie, rehearsals. Castle has no choice. Ultimately, it's all worth it. Crawford delivers a deep, sensitive performance. She tours the country for premieres, axe in hand, and the crowds go wild. But, while reviews are mostly favorable, they consider Straight-Jacket just another horror exploitation flick. At night, Castle dreams of an Oscar, but by day, he's back to his old tricks. He gets a tie-in with the Bell System phone company for a new horror movie, I Saw What You Did. Not last summer, but close. Teenage girls are having fun making crank calls until they inadvertently say, I saw what you did and I know who you are, to an actual killer. It's really a great premise for a movie, but in real life it backfires horribly. Kids all around the country are making crank calls and tying up the phone lines. The phone company, remember at this time there was only one, is furious. They walk out of the deal. They take away the huge plastic phones they had put in front of theaters. They even threaten to disconnect William Castle's own home phone. I Saw What You Did heralds the coming of babysitter horror and slasher films, A Nightmare on Elm Street, Halloween, and When a Stranger Calls. What Castle is the first to do here is mix horror with teen movies. He's also the first to realize that the main character of this new genre is the telephone, at once an instrument of sexual provocation and an anonymous threat. We're now in 1965, and Castle heads a 20-person company. Like Hitchcock, he's turned his name into a brand. Before Hitchcock, he started using his trailers to address the audience himself, and his tongue-in-cheek tone as he explains his insurance policies or his ghost viewer have gone a long way in styling his public image. A merchandising company licenses his name and products. Halloween masks, shirts, toys, greeting cards. In the horror B-movie business, Castle has carved a solid niche for himself. Competition is fierce. Roger Corman, Ed Wood, Hitchcock of course, and the British production company Hammer Films, the first to film horror in color. If you know the Kate Bush song Hammer Horror, that's what that's about, have each developed their style, and there seems to be enough audience to sustain them all. That's not where competition would end up coming from. Just look at some of the TV shows that debuted in 1964. The Addams Family, The Man from U.N.C.L.E., Flipper, Bewitched, Gilligan's Island. It's the beginning of the end for exploitation movies. Or at least, TV is what Castle blames the declining success of his films on. Until the 60s, and even the 70s in some places, most countries only had one TV channel. Now that there are more channels, there's more room for B-movie schlock on the small screen, and less of an incentive to go out to see something like it. His next movies, Let's Kill Uncle, The Busybody, The Spirit is Willing, and Project X, flopped despite big-name casts. Barbara Stanwyck, starring opposite her ex-husband Robert Taylor, Richard Pryor, Dom DeLuise, Ann Baxter, even Sonny and Cher, can't manage to fill the seats. My empire was crumbling, Castle writes, and by 1967 I was ready to throw in the towel. Maybe he should have, but he didn't. The Bramford, old, black, and elephantine, is a warren of high-ceilinged apartments prized for their fireplaces and Victorian detail. Rosemary and Guy had been on its waiting list since their marriage, but had finally given up. 3 hours after reading these lines, Castle is shaking, his face bathed in sweat. He's just finished the galleys of Ira Levin's new book, Rosemary's Baby. It's one of the most powerful stories he's ever read. Small wonder, gripping is Ira Levin's middle name. He wrote The Boys from Brazil and The Stepford Wives. Castle knows Rosemary's Baby is his long-awaited ticket to A-list recognition. He battles hard for the rights, mortgages his house, again. The minute he gets the book rights, he calls the studios. Bob Evans hasn't yet made a name for himself as the producer of such landmark films as The Godfather, Serpico, The Conversation, The Italian Job, and True Grit, but he's got a remarkable nose for blockbusters, and he understands that Hollywood is at the cusp of a new wave. In 1967, he just took over worldwide film production at Paramount. Evans agrees Castle can produce, but the studio will pick the director. He sweetens the deal with $250,000 up front and 50 percentage points of gross earnings for Castle. All he has to do, Evans tells him, is to meet with Roman Polanski. I know what you're probably thinking. For different reasons, that's what Castle is thinking too. He's hell-bent on hating the young, pretentious European, his accent, his Carnaby Street clothes, the way he speaks of himself in the third person. But the enmity doesn't last very long. Castle and Polanski see eye to eye on how to adapt the book. It's The Lady from Shanghai all over again. Castle knows the Polish director, hot on the heels of his success with the horrific comedy The Fearless Vampire Killers, would get a bigger budget and make more at the box office than Castle ever would. They start filming in New York City, outside the Dakota. New York's oldest luxury apartment building, the Dakota was the fashionable place to stay for Hollywood expats. It does look haunted. It's famously where John Lennon was shot, although that hadn't even happened yet at this point. Boris Karloff, Frankenstein himself, had an apartment on the top floor of the Dakota. He grew orchids. Castle escapes the painstaking shoot to have drinks at Lauren Bacall's apartment. The man who shot most of his films in under 2 weeks worries that Polanski is taking too long. The gargoyles of the Dakota seemed to yawn, he writes. Castle, his tweed jacket, and his benign grandfather smile do a quick cameo, a la Hitchcock, outside a phone booth on Fifth Avenue. The shoot survives the Fifth Avenue crowds, the 50-plus takes per shot, the New York weather, and even Frank Sinatra, who wants to pull Mia Farrow, his wife, from Rosemary's Baby to star in one of his own films. Critical acclaim and box office bonanza shower the film at release. Everywhere, worldwide, Rosemary's Baby breaks theater records. It's credited with having launched a whole genre of demonic films led by The Exorcist and The Omen. It might well have planted the first seed for the 1980s satanic panic. 40 years later, author Ira Levin would wonder how influential his story was in the increase in religious fundamentalism. Ira Levin didn't believe in Satan. The reverse might not have been true. For Castle, it starts with the letters. Bastard, believer in witchcraft, lover of Satan, I will see that you are destroyed. Hate mail. Castle has been there before with his previous horror flicks, but it was never that vitriolic. Some viewers are not enjoying the arrival of the Antichrist within a Manhattan coven. A few weeks after the film's release, he claims to get 50 poison letters a day. Most of his mail now remains unopened. He wouldn't mind a change of tone. Paramount asks if he would produce playwright Neil Simon's latest comedy, The Out-of-Towners. Castle loves the script. He starts packing for another trip to New York to meet Simon, but he doesn't feel too great. On Halloween night, William Castle collapses on his kitchen floor. It's kidney stones again. Yes, that wasn't an excuse. All those years later, back in Capri, he did, in fact, have kidney stones. Castle is hospitalized for months, undergoes several operations. As he comes to, he hears the nurses chatter. Christoph Komeda, the composer of Rosemary's Baby's soundtrack, has been brought to the same hospital with a blood clot in his brain. He's in a coma on the 3rd floor. He will never wake up. At night, Castle has nightmares. Rosemary is chasing him with a knife, cutting off his legs. Slowly, he recovers from surgery. He gets home just in time to read the papers. Film star Sharon Tate, another woman, and 3 men were found slain Saturday, their bodies scattered around a Benedict Canyon estate, in what police said resembled a ritualistic mass murder. And just like that, on August 9th, 1969, the 60s are over. So, when Castle gets a long-awaited Golden Globe nomination, the producer, still very ill and certain to be under Rosemary's curse, doesn't care. Castle needs to break the spell. He finds the antidote in the person of Marcel Marceau. Marceau is the man who convinced the world that all French people wear striped shirts and love mime. But everybody loved Marceau once they saw him on stage. As a mime, his artistry was one of a kind. In the US, he would fill 5,000-seat theaters. On the night Castle attends his show, Marceau gets 16 curtain calls. The improbable pair gets to work on Castle's next opus, titled Shanks, no relation. It's a horror movie, or as Marceau calls it, fantastique, a typically French genre mixing the paranormal, the scary, and a sense of fate. Marceau plays both leading men, one aged 35, the other 80. There's reciprocal admiration between Castle and Marceau, but their styles are too far apart, with the great mime not used to the medium of film, asking for constant reshoots and worrying whether the film can be as good as Rosemary's Baby. Castle doesn't have a lot of fun on set, and then the film bombs. It's too late now to capitalize on Rosemary's success. That ship has sailed. For TV, Castle produces Circle of Fear, a Twilight Zone adjacent anthology. It only runs for one season in 1973. Then it's back to good old-fashioned shockers. Castle acquires the rights for a horror book featuring an invasion of giant cockroaches and changes the title to Bug. He breeds 10-inch long roaches that require a separate budget entry for how much raw meat they eat. The actors are reconsidering their life choices. Castle has an idea for a gimmick, tiny windshield wipers attached to seats that would brush against the audience's legs like cockroaches crawling. Exhibitors fear the spectators might panic and rush out. I didn't argue the point, Castle writes, because I knew that in some of the older theaters across America, the real things would crawl across the patrons' legs at no cost. He's not exaggerating. Roaches used to be so much more common in old buildings in America. I found a great big one in my bathtub the other day, but living where I do in a dumpy New York apartment, I'd have had it a lot worse in the 70s. The podcast search engine has a great episode on humans' unsung victory against cockroaches. The wipers idea hits too close to home. Instead, Castle takes out a $1 million insurance policy for Hercules, his star cockroach. William Castle's autobiography ends here, as he channels his best P.T. Barnum to exhort future audiences. Step right up, ladies and gentlemen. Watch the mighty Hercules eat human flesh and belch fire. Buy your tickets at the box office now. Bug hits theaters on June 6th, 1975, the same week as another movie about man-eating beasts. Pun intended, it gets crushed. In the following months, Castle has fun appearing in cameos for other filmmakers. He plays a producer in Hal Ashby's political comedy Shampoo. In The Day of the Locust, John Schlesinger thrashes 1930s Hollywood. Castle plays a director, halfway between Cecil B. DeMille and George Stevens. The film is as dark as it gets, except today it's a bit distracting that Donald Sutherland's character is named Homer Simpson. On May 31st, 1977, the week Star Wars is released, William Castle dies of a heart attack in his Los Angeles home. At the time, William Castle fan clubs number 250,000 fans. Some of these fans grow up to become the next generation of filmmakers. Joe Dante, of Gremlins fame, spent most of his career milking the old recipe. In his web series Trailers from Hell, where famous directors comment on trailers, Dante calls Castle a poor man's Hitchcock. That's a bit rich, coming from someone who started in the business making trailers for the Pope of Exploitation, Roger Corman. Still though, I think we can forgive Dante. He made a feature film about Castle. On the surface, Matinee is the Cuban Missile Crisis seen through the eye of a teenager, Spielberg style. But it's really about Castle. His first-person trailers, his seat buzzers, his cheapo creatures let loose in the theater. When the teenage audience yells in horror and the popcorn flies, John Goodman as Castle lets out a gotcha that brilliantly sums up the character. He's no Hitchcock, playing mind games with the audience, proving he's the superior chess master. At his heart, he's a 12-year-old. He's invented the whoopee cushion, and he shares the fun. Picking up the cushion is another whiz kid from the Spielberg stables, Robert Zemeckis. the director behind Back to the Future, Contact, Forrest Gump, Castaway, The Polar Express. Zemeckis called Castle his favorite filmmaker. In 1998, he co-founded Dark Castle Entertainment. Notice the name? The company's original vision was to remake William Castle movies. With Terry, Castle's daughter, producing, they remade House on Haunted Hill and 13 Ghosts. And then there's John Waters. In an article titled, Whatever Happened to Showmanship, he reflects on Castle's legacy, and he focuses on the gimmicks. The article goes on a hilarious rant about how films of all kinds, from Oscar winners to Korn, could benefit from immersive interactivity. Close the concession stands for Gandhi and let the patrons get into the spirit of the thing by starving to death. For his 1981 film Polyester, Waters takes a sip of his own medicine. He developed Odorama, a scratch and sniff card that started with roses and went downhill fast. Castle was God, he writes. I wish I was William Castle. John Waters gets his wish in the 6th episode of Feud, the 2017 TV show revisiting the almighty clash between Bette Midler and Joan Crawford. Waters plays William Castle as he extends Crawford a helping hand, or a helping axe, and keeps her in business. At a premiere of Straight-Jacket, Crawford, played by Jessica Lange, chases Castle down in the theater aisle, wielding an axe. She decapitates her director in silhouette behind a backlit screen. It must have been a great day for John Waters. Castle filmed the end of his own era. In Graveyard Shift, an episode of the 1973 TV series Circle of Fear, he plays pretty much himself, a producer of horror movies. In the middle of the night, he shows up for a last visit to his film studio, his iconic cigar tucked firmly in his grandfather's smile.
No, I just wanted to take one last look around, to say goodbye in my own way. 40 years, and soon it'll all be dust.
Sooner than he thinks, the lot is haunted by ghosts of terrifying creatures escaped from the studio's old flicks. They persecute Fred the security guard and his pregnant wife. To put an end to the haunting, Fred lights a match and sets the master prince on fire. William Castle's films went through a couple of decades of oblivion and came out the other side as cult movies. Far from being set on fire, they're returning to the world of the living, ripe for Halloween reruns. The gimmicks, the fanny buzzers, and the ghost viewers get reproduced for special screenings. There's this enduring idea that Castle, his less-than-great films, and his dime store gimmicks belong to simpler times, when the audience was less cynical, an innocence gone, a paradise lost. John Waters switches to the blue lens and gets real. We're getting the nostalgia wrong, he seems to say. It's not the audiences that have gotten cynical, it's Hollywood that got small. What's the matter, Hollywood? Are you just gonna sit there with your head in the sand? People are getting bored with the theater-going experience. Can't you come up with something? Will everyone just sit at home with their video machines? William Castle, where are you when we really need you? If John Waters has a minute to spare and decides to start a movement for the return of fun to movie theaters, I suggest we join. Hell, I'll even provide my own creatures. Netflix and thrill isn't all bad, but there's no reason the collective experience should be fenced off in amusement parks and things like that. We need the return of a sense of wonder. We demand to be haunted by the ghost of William Castle. All he needs to do now is just push a little bit harder on that coffin lid.
Believe in something right, but you do something wrong. A loaded question will break your bones, what puts you on your knees. You paint the walls in red, the color of your heart, but the minute